Hi there. I'm Alex Usher, and this is the World of Higher Education podcast. If there's one thing we know for sure about Confucian societies, it's the value that they place on scholarship. Being a student doesn't just connote having future financial success, the very act of studying itself carries an important element of moral virtue. It's one of the things that's driven university participation rates in Asia to extraordinarily high levels. And also, it's done that in diaspora countries around the world. Here in Canada, 25 years ago, Statistics Canada polled parents across the country on their expectations for their children's education. They literally couldn't find a single Chinese parent whose ambitions for their children involved community college. But not everyone can go to university. Well, they can, but it doesn't leave you with the most balanced labor force. So, if you're running a higher education system and you want to get people to focus on vocational skills, what do? Well, if you're China, one strategy might be to create vocational credentials, but attach them to something a little bit more academic, like a degree. Maybe call it a vocational university. With me once again today, this time to talk about vocational higher education in China, is Gerard Postiglione, professor of higher education at the University of Hong Kong. We cover the origins of the Chinese government's vocational education policy, its recent successes, and the development of a new type of institution called the vocational university. It's a good quick tour through an underappreciated part of the global higher education system. Let's turn things over to Jerry. Okay, Jerry, could you give us a sense of where vocational education traditionally sits within Chinese tertiary education or post-secondary education? I mean, this is a Confucian society, and as places like Korea and Japan have shown, there's a fever for book learning, and of course, the connotations of being a scholar. Also, there's also elements of moral virtue there. So where does vocational education sit within this?
China went through a tremendous transition in the 20th century. The early part of the 20th century, the transformation from Qing Dynasty to the Republic, and then the Republic in 1949 to the People's Republic of China. And of course, we're talking about a very poor country at that time with about 85% of the population in poverty. So there was a lot to do. And the first phase was learning from the Soviet Union, which placed a very strong emphasis on the connection between schools and factories, school and labor. So China worked with that for a decade or so. Eventually, if we look at the transformation from the planned economy, when there wasn't an issue of jobs, schools and colleges, their graduates would be assigned jobs to the reform period when market forces began to enter, beginning in 1978, but it really sped up in the early 80s. So you've got in 1985 a major Communist Party policy to universalize basic 9-year education. And at the same time, you have to consider that access to universities is only about 1 or 2% from the 18 to 22 age group. So senior secondary vocational education, 50% of that became vocational technical education, senior secondary or high school. And that was a major change. Now, it was very difficult, of course. There were costs and finance to handle and equipment and so on. But that's when China launched into its first phase of technical vocational education.
Yeah, no, but there's always been kind of a view, and this is not restricted to China, of course, that vocational education is a less than, right. So there was a big to do this summer. There was a student from a fashion high school. I think her name was Jiang Ping, and she won a national math competition, right, against people from very prestigious institutions. And she said, no, I want to stay in vocational education. This caused quite a stir. Maybe not as much of a stir as when it turned out that she'd been coached or there'd been cheating involved or something like that. But I mean, there is that sense, right, that vocational education, maybe in the popular mind anyway, is a distant second choice to a university if you can get it.
Well, the Jiangping case was reported here, and that was too bad. I can understand the teachers hoped to have her students excel in that competition, the Alibaba International Math Competition, in which the contestants could actually use AI. This is the first time in the competition they could rely on it. That's a whole nother story how that worked out. But in her case, she was eliminated when it was discovered that her teacher had helped her. But your question is really about the traditional Confucian view about vocational education, and I think that that's true, and it's also universal in other countries as well. As you know, there is that sense that academic higher education is more valuable and so on. But in China, the case was that there wasn't much choice if you were going into senior secondary education. If you weren't excelling on the academic side, and 50% of the students, if they wanted to go on to senior secondary, their choice was vocational technical education. Now, remember, on top of that, China had a higher education system with both 4-year bachelor degrees and 3-year, what's called specialized specialized colleges, like community colleges, actually. So that was the choice. And of course, you're correct about how people view that. Roll quickly to the future, and I think those views are starting to change. And I think that's because the leadership has taken a strong view on how to persuade people of the value in a high tech age of technical education, vocational technical education.
Right. And so 5 years ago, I think it was 2019, the government of the People's Republic introduced the National Vocational Education Reform Plan, or Reform Implementation Plan. Sorry. What were the key elements of this plan? What were they trying to achieve with it?
Yeah, that was a massive plan at a time when most students were going on to senior secondary education. The access rate was moving to 50%. It certainly passed the stage of mass, certainly past the stage of mass higher education. And of course, now China has moved on to universal higher education with an access rate post-secondary, access rate of 60%. So the government, very astutely, I think, looked at their plans for industrial development, where they specialize, what industries, looked at their long-term plans for the funding of science and technology, high-level skills as well as middle-level skills, and made a decision to become, and the plan is to become the world leader in vocational education. That includes, of course, senior secondary vocational education, but particularly higher vocational education. And what that means is not only strengthening the 3-year, which is almost 50% of the higher education system, the 3-year diplomas in specialized vocational technical education, but taking the universities, which expanded very rapidly, particularly provincial universities, and transforming them into application-oriented uh, universities, bachelor degrees that are um, very vocational technical in their orientation.
Yeah.
And that's where it is right now. And first, I've seen this firsthand, having worked through, along with Asian Development Bank projects, because they have a lot of experience in the larger Asian region, in 2 provinces in China, the province of Gansu and province of Yunnan, and Gansu built a whole city of higher vocational education colleges. We call it vocational technical city. And Yunnan really raced ahead as a model province for the western part of China in this. Now, uh, yeah, so there's a lot to say about that. You know, you're talking about a massive country who's trying to plan its economy, and especially in a time now where we're now down to 5% to GDP growth, which is a little bit less than it was before, and how to position the country in upgrading skills while providing jobs for graduates.
Let me ask you specifically about what are called vocational universities, because my understanding is that those come from roughly the same period, or they come out of the same plan. What do these vocational universities do, and how are they different from the specialized university or specialized institutions or vocational colleges that we talked about a second ago, and traditional academic universities? What's the difference in terms of programming and curriculum?
Okay, the first thing I'd say is the entire system, including the top tier universities, are trying to focus much more on application oriented skills. Okay. But of course, the top tier, the flagship universities and the highly ranked universities, there's not much of an issue. I mean, they're also looking at the very special rapid advancement of science and technology in the country, new discoveries and innovations and so on. The rest of the system, which is massive, is trying to align itself with the economy and the labor market. So the transformation of these schools, and they're called in English, and now the translation has changed a little bit. Colleges of applied science, universities of applied science, application oriented universities. The difference is that the relationship with industry is the key element, and bringing them much closer. Now, this is a challenge because, of course, industries are responsible for not only production but profits. And the question is, by cooperating with a college, a provincial college, for example, what does that do? How do you cooperate with a bunch of academics who were trained in, in academic areas, might have a PhD, and they're teaching in those areas? But that's the challenge, and that's where what's happening now. And at the upper levels, it's happening much better. For example, the Huawei company now employs most of the employees have PhDs, and of course, a company like Huawei is absolutely application oriented. But we're talking about the rest of the country now. The state-owned enterprises are heavily encouraged to engage with application oriented, or call them colleges and universities of applied science. There is also a private sector. Now, the private sector is growing, and the advantage of the private vocational technical colleges, or private colleges, universities of applied science, is that they have to, if their graduates don't get jobs, of course, they're not going to get students to apply to them. So,
Right.
and there's something each side learns, they learn from each other. So, this is what the emphasis is on. And uh, students from the colleges and universities of applied science would also receive what they call credits, certifications for the skills that they learn. A credit bank is probably a good word to use for what they're doing.
So you've raised something here that I think is kind of important, because in India they're building what are called skills universities, and I can't quite figure out how they work or what they're supposed to do, but there is a big corporate aspect to them, right? So they're either inviting industry in directly to teach programs, or they're getting them to help design the curriculum directly. Is that also the case here? Like, is there a lot of corporate involvement in these vocational universities, be they public or private?
I think China's moving much more quickly in this respect. It's also trying to recruit members of companies, corporations, to go into universities and teach, to actually collaborate with academic staff to form centers for training, centers for experimentation. There are experimental, vocational, or let's call them colleges of applied science, in different cities all over the country. This is very serious. The government and the party are extremely serious about this plan to become a global leader, and the evaluation systems, of course, have to be put in place. This is something which is still in the process. But the key element seems to be to bring, not seems to be, it's bringing industry into the university. And so that the and it also wants to internationalize the sector, and it's very open to looking at models around the world. I've been asked to introduce the German elements. Now, I published a paper with an economist in China called International Policies and Experiences for China's Higher Vocational and Technical Education. And I we compared the German model with the China model, and that's what it's all about. And so it's in an international journal of training research.
To what extent is this vocationalization a reaction to the very high rates of graduate unemployment at traditional universities? So I remember as long ago as 2014, China announced plans to turn several hundred universities into polytechnics. And maybe they just don't call them polytechnics. Maybe these are some of these colleges of applied science that you've been talking about. But is this about government frustration with imbalances between graduate skills and labor market needs?
Yeah, well, a couple of things. First of all, the translations of the words, you could call them polytechnics. For example, Hong Kong, we have a polytechnic university, which is ranked very highly globally. Or you could call them universities of applied science. I wouldn't worry too much about what you call them. The main point is that they're application-oriented bachelor degrees. Okay, they are
Okay.
degrees. And this also addresses that issue of families saying, "Oh, I don't want my children to go to anything but academic higher education." But if you get a degree from a university and it happens to be very vocational, academic oriented, then your problem is solved about the image of vocational education. So I don't see that as much of a problem. Unemployment is a very strong concern because growth in GDP has slowed down. And when you move from mass higher education to universal higher education, it's expected that that's going to happen. I look at that as a phase that China's dealing with, but it's looking long term. It's trying to have certain stimulus plans in order to address the short term problem of graduate unemployment. Uh, but I think they're holding the line. It is higher than they would like it to be. I have to share an experience having attended university in the U.S. during times when the U.S. economy had took a very strong turn downward. Graduate unemployment was a serious problem for a few years. So the expectation is that this will be turned around, but it may take 3, 4, 5 years.
Sure, sure. And so what's student uptake like at these vocational universities? I mean, you said, that if your graduates don't get jobs, students aren't going to come. So are they coming? Do parents want their kids to go to these places? Like what's the demand for this? Does it look very different than it does for traditional universities?
Well, and this is partly cultural. The demand for education in China is still tremendous, and it's civilizationally based. And my own students, even in Hong Kong, the universities here, who have gone all the way through the system, if there was a second and third doctorate, they would go on. The demand is there, and the students are good. Generally, across China, there's a heavy emphasis on education, civilizationally so. Now, is there an uptake? Now, when I talked about the private higher education system, that's a different issue because they don't get much funding from government at all. Their funding is based on student fees, also investments and donations. And some of them do extremely well, and they compete. And of course, the public system, the state system, learns from them. They have to survive. So the uptake will depend upon how well they do. But for the state system, there is no problem in uptake because it's a degree program, and and there are even top ups. For example, if you have a bachelor's degree, there are ways that, depending on the job market, you can spend an extra year and pick up the skills you need to dive into the job market.
Right. Well, that's very similar to our community colleges in Canada. So, final question: as China continues to reform and expand its higher education system, what do you see as the future for vocational universities? Are they going to be a bigger part of the mix going forward? And if so, is it going to be, will it be confined to certain fields of study, or how do you see this playing out?
Vocational technical higher education in China is already a major component of the higher education system, and it will stay that way. Uh, One of the reasons that the productivity of Chinese manufacturing, and whether it's in the green skills or production of batteries for electric cars, or any of the other technical aspects of the green economy, uh, China's learned quite a bit from the international experience, working with, the Elon Musk's company, or working with IBM, or working with the U.S. tractor companies, and so on. So I think that the answer to the question is, yeah, it's going to be there, and their plan, and they usually follow through, is to go full throttle into higher vocational technical colleges, polytechnics, if you call them, colleges of applied science. And I would expect that the rest of the region is also going to be moving in that direction, particularly for the middle level developing countries.
Yeah. Jerry, thanks so much for being with us today.
You're very welcome.
And it just remains for me to thank our excellent producers, Tiff McLennan and Sam Pufek, and of course you, our listener, for joining us. If you have any questions about the program or suggestions for future episodes, please don't hesitate to get in contact with us at podcast@higheredstrategy.com. Please join us on YouTube. Subscribe to our YouTube page. Never miss an episode of the World of Higher Education podcast. Join us next week for our last episode of the year. And as usual, we're going to be joined by Robert Kelchin from the University of Tennessee. He's going to be doing our top 10 list of stories in U.S. higher education. Bye for now.